All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're embarking on a really unique expedition. We're diving into Cimicifuga racemosa, you might know it as black snake root, and our mission is to crack open this old, fascinating book, a homeopathic text, and really pull out the most maybe unexpected insights about how this substance was described way back when. It's kind of like finding a treasure map, but for historical observations.
Exactly. And that treasure map, so to speak, is William Boericke's Homeopathic Materia Medica. Now, for anyone not familiar, Materia Medica isn't like a modern clinical trial report. Think of it more as a meticulously kept journal, or maybe a compendium of observations. It's where practitioners wrote down exactly what they saw, what patients told them when a certain substance was used. So our goal here, just to be clear, isn't to validate or debunk anything. It's really about understanding the incredible detail and the distinct profile of Cimicifuga racemosa through that historical lens. It's a fascinating glimpse into how they observed things back then.
Absolutely. So if you've ever wondered just how intricate historical medical observations could get, this is kind of your shortcut. We're going to peel back the layers and, discover how Cimicifuga racemosa was seen to influence everything, from mental states right down to muscle aches. Get ready, because honestly, some of these connections they made might just surprise you. Okay, so let's dive in. What does Boericke immediately flag about this substance? Cimicifuga racemosa. It shows up under a couple other names too, right? Like Actea racemosa or macrodisease. And what really jumps out first is its described wide action. I mean, we're talking about a reported influence across the cerebrospinal system, so brain, nerves, and muscles, and very specifically, the uterus and ovaries. It seems like it was thought to hit some pretty major control centers in the body.
That's a really crucial starting point, yeah. And the text, it really zeroes in on the core indicators for its use. Boericke actually states, agitation and pain are the sort of characteristic signals. And this isn't just general discomfort. He describes pains like, get this, electric shocks here and there, which gives you a really vivid, almost, shocking sense of the kind of sensation they were noting down.
Electric shocks.
Yeah. And what's also fascinating is its reported ability to, quote, lessen the frequency and force of the pulse, soothe pain, and allay irritability. So that suggests a kind of calming, almost sedative effect alongside the pain relief they observed.
I'm really struck by that phrase, electric shocks. It's so precise, isn't it? For something they couldn't possibly have understood neurologically back then. What does that kind of specific language tell us about how they approached documenting symptoms? And Boericke specifically notes its usefulness in rheumatic nervous subjects with ovarian irritation, uterine cramps, and heavy limbs. So a very particular kind of patient profile seems to emerge right from the start.
It does. And building on that idea of agitation and pain, what's truly remarkable is how deep Boericke goes into the mental side of things. The descriptions aren't vague at all. They're incredibly specific, sometimes almost poetic. Like, imagine a patient describing a sensation of a cloud enveloping her, or experiencing great depression with dream of impending evil. I mean, this isn't just feeling down. It's a very particular kind of mental fog and sense of foreboding.
A cloud enveloping her. That is striking. It really makes you wonder by the exact words patients used, and how accurately it was captured. Were these metaphors, or did they feel it literally? What else did they observe in the mind?
That's a great question. It really highlights the interpretive act involved in documenting symptoms back then. The text gets into distinct fears too, like fears riding in a closed carriage or being obliged to jump out.
Yeah.
Very specific. It goes further. It mentions states like incessant talking or seeing visions of rats, mice, etc. Even more dramatic stuff like delirium tremens, tries to injure himself, or mania following disappearance of neuralgia. Yeah. What this really reveals, I think, is not just a random list of symptoms. It shows how intricately these practitioners linked intense emotional and psychological states to physical processes. That's a connection that might seem, maybe surprising to us today with our more specialized views. It definitely underscores that reported action on the cerebrospinal system.
Okay, so if the mind is affected that profoundly, how does that translate to the head itself? Because the text also mentions things like a wild feeling in brain and shooting and throbbing pains after mental worry, overstudy, or reflex of uterine disease. So that seems to be a consistent theme, right? Mental state, physical discomfort, and even links to other parts of the body.
Precisely. And the head symptoms include some really unusual sensations. Things like a waving sensation or opening and shutting sensation in brain, or the brain feeling too large and a pressing outward pain. I mean, these aren't your everyday headache descriptions, are they? They really hint at some profound internal disquiet.
Definitely not.
And beyond that, it touches on sensory details too, like tinnitus that's ringing in the ears and ears sensitive to least noise. It's almost as if the whole nervous system is just sort of buzzing with heightened, sometimes quite bizarre activity.
The level of detail, the granularity, it just keeps going, even down at the senses, like the eyes, for instance. They get their own section here. Boericke describes asthenopia associated with pelvic trouble. That means eye strain linked to problems down in the pelvic region. Now, that's a connection you wouldn't necessarily leap to today, as it really reinforces that idea of a wide-ranging influence.
It absolutely does. It suggests a pretty holistic view of the body, even if they couldn't explain the why like we might try to now. And the eye pains weren't subtle either. It mentions deep-seated throbbing and shooting pains in eyes with photophobia from artificial light, so sensitive to light. Also, intense aching of eyeball and pain that radiates, specifically pain from eyes to top of head. These are really sharp, acute observations being recorded.
Intense is the word. It really feels like they're building this complex network of interconnected symptoms. And that network seems to extend right into the stomach, too. The source notes nausea and vomiting caused by pressure on spine and cervical region. Okay, that link between digestion and the spine, that's really interesting. What else did they note for the stomach?
Yeah, it's like they were drawing a map, connecting things that maybe seem unrelated to us now, like nausea and a sensitive spine. But it was clearly a key observation for them. You'll also find descriptions like sinking in epigastrium, that's the pit of your stomach basically, and a gnawing pain. Along with physical signs like the tongue pointed and trembling, these little details, they suggest maybe a nervous, almost anxious element to the digestive upset described. And these kinds of pervasive symptoms, they lead us pretty naturally to areas where Cimicifuga racemosa seems to have been particularly noted. Specifically, female health and musculoskeletal issues. For female organs, Boericke is meticulous. He describes pain in ovarian region, shoots upward and down anterior surface of thighs. See, that's not just a general ache. It's got a very clear trajectory, almost like it's following a nerve path.
That detail is amazing, not just where it hurts, but how the pain moves. What about menstrual symptoms? Those can be so incredibly varied for people.
They certainly can be. And Boericke connects this substance to pain immediately before menses. Also, menses profuse, dark, coagulated, offensive with backache, nervousness, always irregular. Quite a cluster of symptoms there. The text also points specifically to ovarian neuralgia, that's sharp nerve pain in the ovaries, and a very distinct description, pain across pelvis, from hip to hip.
Right across the pelvis.
Yeah. And beyond menstruation, it covers things like after pains with great sensitiveness and intolerance to pain. And inframammary pains worse, left side, so pain below the breast on the left. And even, interestingly, facial blemishes in young women, which sort of hints at a broader, maybe constitutional effect being observed.
It's really quite astonishing how this one substance was observed to touch on such a wide range of symptoms, from deep internal pains to visible skin issues, all potentially linked. Okay, so let's shift gears slightly to the musculoskeletal system. How does that core idea of agitation and pain show up there?
Oh, it shows up quite powerfully. The spine itself is highlighted as very sensitive, especially upper part. Then you find descriptions like stiffness and contraction in neck and back. Also, intercostal rheumatism, that's pain between the ribs, and just general rheumatic pains in muscles of back and neck. And when we look at the arms and legs, the extremities, the observations include an uneasy, restless feeling in limbs, plus aching in limbs and muscular soreness, and specifically rheumatism affecting the belly of muscles, especially large muscles.
Okay, so affecting the main part of the muscle.
Exactly. And what's particularly revealing, I think, are the associated movements mentioned. Things like choreic movements accompanied by rheumatism. Those are involuntary jerky motions, along with just general jerking of limbs and even stiffness in tendo Achilles, your heel cord.
So it sounds like we're seeing this pattern of widespread, maybe even shifting pains, and also this kind of nervous restlessness in the muscles themselves. That sounds incredibly unpleasant, debilitating even.
Exactly. And the section kind of wraps up with descriptions of heaviness in lower extremities and a general heavy, aching, tensive pain.
Yeah.
It really paints this vivid picture of persistent physical discomfort, often, as you say, accompanied by that feeling of agitation we started with. It's almost like the nervous system is constantly firing off these distress signals to the muscles and joints.
It really does cover so much ground. Okay, let's try and round out the whole picture Boericke painted of Cimicifuga racemosa's reported actions. Even the respiratory system gets a mention, right? Boericke notes things like a tickling in throat, a dry, short cough, worse speaking, and at night. And also, a cough when secretion is scanty spasmodic, dry with muscular soreness and nervous irritation. So it seems like coughs with a definite nervous element attached.
That's right, yeah. And then moving over to the heart, you find some pretty striking descriptions. Things like an irregular, slow, trembling pulse and just tremulous action. Even symptoms resembling angina pectoris, that's severe chest pain. And what's particularly vivid are these specific sensations. Numbness of left arm, feels as if bound to side. And this really dramatic one, heart's action ceases suddenly, impending suffocation.
Wow, that sounds terrifying.
It does. These are quite alarming observations, suggesting some profound cardiac and respiratory distress was noted, often with a left-sided focus, actually, which links back to that left-sided inframammary pain we mentioned earlier.
Okay, so the connections keep building. And does it also address sleep?
Yes, sleeplessness is noted, and interestingly, also brain irritation of children during dentition. So that links nervous restlessness affecting sleep, even in teething babies. And then, for a truly surprising, almost out of left field application, the text mentions its use both locally and internally for IV poisoning.
IV poisoning.
Really? Yeah. It just shows how these historical texts sometimes cataloged really diverse observations all under one substance heading.
Okay, so to really get the full picture from Boericke on Cimicifuga racemosa, we need to touch on its modalities and relationships. Now, for anyone listening who's maybe new to this kind of text, what exactly are modalities?
That's a great question because modalities are absolutely key to understanding how these old texts were used. When we talk about modalities, you can basically think of it as the historical way of noting trials and reliefs. So the precise conditions or times of day or circumstances that reportedly made a symptom either better or worse. It's a fascinating level of clinical detail they were recording, way beyond just listing symptoms. For Cimicifuga racemosa, symptoms are described as worse in the morning, cold, except interestingly, headache, during menses. And specifically, the more profuse the flow, the greater the suffering. And conversely, symptoms were reportedly better with warmth, eating.
That really does help paint a much fuller picture of the patient's actual experience.
Okay, and then there's the relationship section. What does that part tell us?
Right, the relationship section is also crucial. It essentially compares Cimicifuga racemosa to other remedies that were thought to share similar actions. It helps to kind of refine the understanding of its specific uses by showing what it might be confused with, perhaps, or what other substances might complement its effects. So, for example, it's compared to Rhamnus californica, specifically for muscular pains, lumbago, chlorodynia, acute rheumatism, and to Daris pinnata for neuralgic headaches of rheumatic origin. And there's another one, Aristolochia melomens, mentioned for pain in tendo Achilles, diabetes. So this comparative approach, it further sharpens the focus on its specific reported applications.
It's almost like an old school cross-referencing system built right in. Very useful. And finally, just briefly, what about the typical dose mentioned in the text? Right. And for anyone curious about the dose in this context, it's referring to the dilution strength used in homeopathy. Boericke notes it ranged from the 1st to 30th attenuation, but adds that the third was the most frequently used. So this implies highly diluted preparations were common, and it's just part of understanding the specific methodology being described in this historical source.
What an absolutely incredible journey into Cimicifuga racemosa that was. We've really managed to peel back the layers of Boericke's Materia Medica, haven't we? Uncovering just an astonishing array of reported actions. I mean, from that sensation of a cloud enveloping her right through to the electric shock pains, and those incredibly detailed observations of female health issues and musculoskeletal complaints. It truly shows the precision, the detail with which these historical observations were documented. It's really quite a snapshot of a different time in medical understanding.
It really is. And I think this leads to maybe a powerful thought for you, the listener, to kind of carry forward from this. How does this incredibly detailed, almost holistic way of observing things, like we see in historical texts like Boericke's, how does that inform how we think about health today? Especially when you consider that intricate interplay they described between, say, our mental state and our physical sensations. So vividly highlighted by things like a dream of impending evil being described right alongside pain across pelvis from hip to hip. What stands out to you as maybe the most surprising connection you heard today, or perhaps the most insightful part of looking back at this historical perspective?
That is such a powerful thought to reflect on. We really hope this deep dive encourages you to continue your own exploration, stay curious, and keep looking for those connections and fascinating details that are often hiding right there in plain sight. Until next time, keep digging deep.